Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope all of you are doing well. This is Mohsen Garakhani, and I moderate the meeting. I am glad to be back with you again for yet another week. I think it's better to first introduce our Kafe Kitab Bime. We call it in Farsi Kafe Kitab Bime, which is a volunteer club that we enjoy. In this meeting, we enjoy our talk with Ishaq. In the last part of the session, if you have enough time, you can raise your hand and ask any question. Okay. If I want to introduce Kafe Kitab Bime, it's established around 1 year ago. We had about 50 sessions during last year. Our main activity are reading books and talking with industry leaders and reviewing insurance regulation. The ultimate goal of our cafe is to share knowledge and experience and learn new insurance subjects with students and young practitioners. Okay, so today we are happy to host Mr. Ishaq Sahhar, a professional energy broker with more than 35 years of experience in international insurance markets. And we would like to talk about energy and construction insurance, mainly on downstream, and with him and leverage our knowledge. Okay, let's get started. Hi again, Ishaq.
Hi, Mohsen. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thanks to you and to the Insurance Book Club. Much appreciated. Thank you, Mohsen.
Thank you.
If I just say a couple of words very briefly, this presentation has been put together thanks to many of my colleagues, but again, on the assumption that many of your participants are from the insurance sector and not from the oil and gas sector. Also, I'm assuming they have a clear and significant understanding in reinsurance and the way things works in the reinsurance market. And as you've said yourself, this will be very much focused on downstream. And therefore, I would assume some of your candidates or participants will have some sort of in-depth knowledge of how downstream works. And I will be showing some examples what it means. As I said to Mohsen earlier, I'm happy to share my presentation, and I think he's already done it through PDF. As you and I discussed, Mohsen, may I start by showing a video about a recent incident in America, in one of the refineries. It's just simply to try to keep things on track with the help of IT here with me. So may I take the opportunity to start by showing this video?
Please, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is it shared, Mohsen?
Yes, I can see the video.
April 26, 2018, the Husky Superior Refinery in Superior, Wisconsin. At 5:40 a.m., operators took steps to shut down the refinery's fluid catalytic cracker, or FCC unit, for periodic maintenance and inspection. The FCC unit uses heat and a solid catalyst to break or crack heavy hydrocarbons from crude oil into smaller hydrocarbons, which can then be blended into gasoline and other products. Slide valves control the flow of catalyst between a reactor, which contains flammable hydrocarbons, and a regenerator, which contains air. It is important to prevent mixing the hydrocarbons in air, since if they mix, a dangerous explosion can occur. To avoid this hazard, the slide valves maintain a catalyst level between the reactor and regenerator, which acts as a barrier. To initiate the shutdown of the FCC unit, refinery workers stopped the flow of hydrocarbons to the unit and closed the two slide valves connecting the reactor to the regenerator. But unknown to the workers, one of those slide valves was eroded, and even though it closed, it could not maintain a catalyst barrier in the reactor. As a result, the catalyst from the reactor fell through the valve to the regenerator, leaving no protective barrier between the two pieces of equipment. This allowed air from the regenerator to flow backwards through the slide valve into the reactor, and then into equipment downstream of the reactor, which contained hydrocarbons, forming a flammable mixture. At approximately 10 a.m., the hazardous mixture of air and hydrocarbons found an ignition source, and there was a large explosion. Debris from the explosion flew about 200 feet and hit a large above-ground storage tank, puncturing the side of the tank and releasing hot asphalt. Asphalt poured out of the tank over the containment pond and into the refinery's operating units, where it spread along the ground. At around 12:15 p.m., the released asphalt ignited near the storage tanks, and a fire broke out. The fire traveled along a stream of asphalt to the refinery's crude and FCC units. The fire produced a huge plume of black smoke, leading to the evacuation of a portion of the town of Superior. Typically, this type of asphalt fire can burn for days. The plan to extinguish the fire was developed by the refinery's emergency response team. Around 3 o'clock, they began to address the asphalt fire together with the Superior Fire Department. A fire truck drove to the edge of the crude unit, and emergency responders sprayed dry chemical fire extinguisher inside to fight the fires that had broken out there. Responders also used 2 stationary hoses called monitors to shoot water into the crude unit in an attempt to extinguish the flames. While these fires were being put out over by the storage tanks, emergency responders began to approach the large area of burning asphalt. The emergency responders' plan was to push the asphalt fire into an empty area near the storage tanks, and then aggressively attack the fire from multiple directions. First, they used 2 monitors, one to the north and another to the west, to sweep water to push the asphalt fire toward the designated containment area. Then, when the fires within the refinery's units had been extinguished, the fire truck relocated so that it could spray the burning asphalt in the containment area with foam from the east. Around 5:30, an additional team began to attack the fire from the south, spraying foam from a monitor. At this point, the asphalt fire was completely surrounded within the containment area. With the fire contained, emergency responders were able to put out the asphalt fire at around 7 p.m. The asphalt fire had been extinguished in a matter of hours, as opposed to days, as had been initially feared. The evacuation order was lifted, and Superior residents were allowed to return home. Nevertheless, 36 Husky employees and contract workers sought medical attention for injuries.
Mohsen, while Tom is bringing me back to the main presentation, I'd like just to very quickly highlight a couple of issues here. He mentioned that the plate separating the element is corroded, is eroded. And I'd like to ask the participants a question here, whether they think that the shrapnel, the piece of metal that hit the tank, is covered or not covered, and obviously the resultant damage. We will talk about it a little bit later if we have the time.
Yeah.
With your permission, may I just very briefly show you what I'm going to talk about? Basically, I'd like to do a brief introduction to downstream, and I would like to give you some example. I'd like to share with you what's happening in the international energy reinsurance markets. And again, we can't have a presentation without talking about COVID and ESG. And I wonder if people know what do I mean by ESG. It is important to talk about losses and how its impact on capacity, on rates, underwriters, attitudes, and so on. And then the last item on the agenda, I'm calling it re-engaging the international market. And really, my intention of this is particularly for countries who are at the moment slightly isolated from international scene because of way of sanctions. So really, this is meant to be for post-sanction. Examples. Mohsen, is the presentation clear to you?
Yes, yes. Now we have the second slide.
Yes. Typically, when we talk about downstream, we're referring to refineries, exactly like the one you saw in the loss. Petrochemical plants like MPC in your country, gas processing plants like NIGC in your country, and even power generation or electricity generating companies. And we will talk about the problems associated with this type of cover a little bit later. Ideally, what is covered under a typical all risk damage policy or insurance policy? Always natural catastrophes, earthquakes, one example comes to mind. And there always has to be an element of sudden and accidental loss in every way, in every sense. Again, more recently, we're seeing many people acquiring business interruption or contingent business interruption. Mohsen, as we spoke earlier, and delegates, I would like to be brief on some of the presentations because I have 52 of them. I mean 52 slides. So I want to be brief, if I may, on some of these slides.
Exactly. I think if you tell us about some of the slides with more detail, it would be better. And my friend can refer to the slide after the session.
Yes.
To other slide.
Thank you. Now, it is important that when you are buying an energy policy or risk property insurance policy, to make sure that you have a cover for additional firefighting costs. Firefighting costs following an incident can be quite expensive. Similarly, debris removal following an accident, this could be very expensive, and you need to make sure that your all risk policy includes these items among many other items. I'd like to pose the question here before I move further. Is an all risk policy really an all risk policy? I'll leave it for you to debate it later or whenever you have the opportunity. Business interruption, the brief definition of it is to put the insured in the same financial position before the loss, before the physical damage that occurred on this side or to this side. Look at the items highlighted in yellow. I've picked up on some of the largest losses in North America and in Europe. And you can see on the right-hand side, the items highlighted in yellow, that while the property damage loss is $75 million, the business interruption and market loss exceeded 600 million. And the one underneath it exceeded 570. You can see that business interruption is very significant. And as a rule of thumb, roughly, that business interruption losses are more or less 4 times the size of property damage. Now, I'm aware that in certain oil producing countries, certain OPEC producing countries, business interruption insurance is not acquired, which I understand. The market, what do we mean the market? It's where insurance, reinsurance transacted through the intermediary of reinsurance brokers. And despite the many changes, the international energy market remained focused here in London and some European countries. In this, over the next few slides, again, briefly, I'd like to talk about trends, what's happening in this market, what sort of capacities are available for us. I'd like to talk about claims and talk about whether this market is profitable or not. And it's very difficult, if you give me 1 second to catch up on my notes. Just very brief introduction to what you're going to see, that this market has gone through unprecedented time with both issues connected with COVID. Here in Europe, I'm not sure how it was in certain parts of the Middle East. We were forced to work from home for almost 18 months. Just before I proceed any further, I'd like to pin down that between 2016 and 2019, as you can see from this slide, the energy market suffered huge losses. Again, look at these examples of losses. The big freeze, this is very recent in America. Pemex refinery in Mexico, Pertamina in Indonesia, again, wildfires and other issues and floods in the Arab world, in the Middle East. Can I just take this opportunity here to say that no matter what we say, that most of the big losses tend to come to the London market from North America and indeed some parts of Southeast Asia. But North America remains the biggest producer of losses, and equally they are the biggest producer of premium income into the London market. Capacity. I'm assuming that the participants would know what I mean by capacity. I wonder, Mohsen, if you would mention this in your language, or is there a need for that in Farsi? Do you need to say that or no need?
Yes, I can explain in Farsi. دوستان عزیز سلام عرض می‌کنم مجدد. داریم در خصوص ظرفیت موجود در بازار توی رشته انرژی صحبت میکنن. منتها قبل از اینکه ادامه بحث رو بگیم، سوالی که اول بحث پرسیدن دوستان هیچ کدام مشارکت نکردن. من خواهش میکنم که هر کدام از عزیزان اگر افرادی میتونن تو بحث شرکت بکنن لطفاً گفتگو رو دو طرفه بکنیم. پرسیدن که این در اثر در واقع انفجار اون تیکه فلزی که از اون در واقع برج کنده شد و به تانک خورد و اونجا منشأ اصلی آتش سوزی بود، آیا اون تحت پوششه یا نه؟ Okay, Ishaq, continue.
Thank you very much. I think very briefly, I'd like to comment here that, as you can see from the chart, that there has been an increase in capacity. And later on, we will look at what does it mean when you have increase in capacity. It means more supply. More supply could eventually lead to price changes, but I'll cover this through other slides. I would suggest that the current capacity could stand at $4 billion for any one risk. This is providing that this is a first-class risk and it is not present or located in countries with natural perils like earthquake or volcano. I'd like also to point out, for those of you who are familiar with the French reinsurer, SCOR has announced very recently increase in their underwriting capacity. This will have its impact on our business for a little bit later. Rates. To obtain a premium, we take the rate and multiply it by the sum insured to give us the premium. And a rate, it's a combination of a multiple factors that underwriter take into account when working out a particular rate for a refinery or a petrochemical plant. We have seen rate increases over the last renewal and a renewal every 12 months. Although business interruption values have been reduced, underwriters and reinsurers have been very keen that rate increases to offset other unprofitable lines of business. Similar again, particularly the Lloyd's underwriting market, they are very keen to keep this rate increase, more premium and more profitability eventually if they don't have losses. I won't go through this slide, it's very detailed, but myself and my colleagues, for the purpose of a study we did recently, we've gone through each quarter, Q1, it means a quarter, every 4 months of a year, trying to work, every 3 months of a year, trying to work out how the rate moved. And I think I will leave this for you to look at it at your own leisure. It's perhaps here, it's worth mentioning that we have seen some energy clients who opted for buying a 2-year deal, 24 months deal, thinking that they can lock the market. However, this has not been well received by underwriters so far, but we can cover it a bit later. What is the future? The future is very difficult to look into, but the expectations that the second quarter of this year, which is 2022, may have started to decrease. However, with recent events in Ukraine, this appears unlikely, with reinsurance now not expected to renew major Russian oil and gas clients. As you know, they are under sanctions here as far as Europe is concerned. It is early days, but thus far, reinsurers have said that the rates will increase. We'll still assume that obviously no serious market changes, no big losses. And assuming everyone is, I'm just picking certain items from the list here. I'm covering the concept of verticalization, which is basically approaching several underwriters, each of them demanding or asking for a separate rate or a separate premium for his share of the risk. So you will end up with possibly 10, 15 underwriters, each and every one of them looking for a different premium. And this is very difficult. At the end of the day, what the broker will do will add those premiums together, proportion them to the written shares of each underwriter, and present the client with one overall premium. For some of us, the old generation and possibly Mohsen, you may remember in the old days, we used to have the Munich Re writing 10% at $2 million premium, and everyone will respect this and will follow this.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, no longer the situation.
Exactly.
Looking forward, I mentioned it earlier that we used to see energy business underwritten in certain hubs like Singapore, Hong Kong, Dubai in the DIFC, and so on. But as of early last year, we becoming to notice that a lot of the underwriting authority has come back to the London market, and the London market remains the center of excellence. Looking forward, it is very difficult to look forward without considering environmental, social governance strategy. And here,
excuse me, Ishaq, is it due to pandemic that they returned to London market, or it was caused by other?
I think there are a number of combinations, including the pandemic, but there is an element of cost saving. What is the point if you have an office in London, an office in Singapore and Dubai, and the three of you are doing the same type of business? Offices and workshops, or sorry, offices in Singapore and Dubai can be very expensive. So to me, predominantly, it is a cost exercise plus a more unified approach to any specific risk, plus, which is more important, more control by the head of the underwriting team, more control.
Yeah. Thanks to the technology, I think they can do the same thing from London.
Yes, they can. But this will take us back to the old days that really you need to go and see the underwriter, sit in front of the underwriter and explain to him. And this is obviously the job of a broker, and it's good for brokers that we have this situation. You and I, Mohsen, we spoke about environmental and social governance. I have one slide about it to tell you what is it and why oil companies and gas companies need to worry about this for the foreseeable future. May I, again, like other slides, go through this very quickly, but it is very difficult, or it is unusual to see a presentation on downstream energy without talking about the impact of COVID on the original insured and reinsurance companies.
If you let me, I can explain in Farsi again.
Please do. I think really what's important, okay, personnel safety, but really the main concern, if you are an underwriter, Mohsen, is what are you doing with your operational assets during COVID? That's really. So I'll give you the time you need to explain this. I'll drink my water.
Okay. این موضوع ESG که اشاره کردم قبلا هم به من گفتش که توی مکالماتی که قبل از جلسه با هم داشتیم که این به فارسی دقیقاً چی میشه. حالا نمیدونم در اسلایدها بعضی کلمات فارسی هم من دارم میبینم. environmental, social و governance هست ESG که تاکید کردن که اصلا نمیشه ما درباره پروژه‌های داونستریم صحبت بکنیم ولی به مسائل مثلا زیست محیطی و مسائل اجتماعی و گاورننس توجه نکنیم. این موضوع در واقع مسائل زیست محیطی و مسائل اجتماعی و مسائل حاکمیتی خیلی توی پروژه‌های داونستریم که خودمون میشه بالادستی، حالا در نفت و گاز و پتروشیمی و حتی نیروگاه هم ایشون مثال زدن و پالایشگاه ها، این موضوع اهمیت پیدا میکنه. Okay, Ishaq.
Thank you. I think I will tackle the impact of COVID on reinsurers. Although I've highlighted on some of the slides how this impacted original insured. And again, just to be clear, when I'm talking about original insured in this context, I'm talking about oil companies, gas companies, and so on, energy producing companies, and not insurance companies. Now, excuse me, in terms of reinsurance, we've seen it over the last 2 years, the concern of reinsurers because of delayed maintenance procedures. Typically, on an oil refinery, there is always a maintenance program. It could be once, twice, or even 3 times a year that the refinery is shut and they carry out preventative and predictive maintenance. Now, over the last 2 years, as I said, we have noticed delays simply because some refineries do not have sufficient staff to attend to this. On construction projects that need to be commissioned, we have noticed that foreign contractors operating in certain countries were unable to attend the site to get the plant moving or to get the plant commission started. And therefore, they opted for remote commissioning. There has been a lot of concern by reinsurers. How can you remote commission a plant? When you start the plant, when you put the ignition on, you need to be present to see and to hear and to smell what sort of things going on. Another point of concern for underwriters is following a loss, it's taking a lot of time to carry out repairs. Simply shortage of equipment, shortage of laborers, and in some cases, shortage of money. And again, whenever there is a delay in repair, this will have serious impact on business interruption payments. We've seen underwriters as of January 2020 imposing certain new disease exclusions, which we have not seen them before, like the communicable disease exclusion clause, which effectively it says that if there is a disease which prevent the plant or the staff from attending, carrying out their duties, which results in physical loss or damage, I am not going to pay you. This is very serious and needs to be examined if you are in a position to review wordings for your employers or for your insurance companies. Again, and similarly, we've seen new clauses coming in like testing and commissioning, prepared or drafted by the London Market Association under number 5197A. And again, you need to be aware of the inclusion of this clause and its impact on future claims and losses. Impact of environmental social governance. While we've seen the impact on oil and gas producing companies, they have to be seen green, they have to change their systems and procedures. I think perhaps what's more concerning that insurance companies or reinsurance companies are now taking as part of the underwriting process seeking to obtain information from clients on COVID. And to be more specific, I've highlighted here below under the be aware of the London Joint RIG Committee Circular 2021. I have not shared this part of the presentation, but I'm happy immediately to send it to Mohsen for the club. Basically, this is a one-page questionnaire which energy underwriters at the moment demanding and asking their clients, their oil and gas clients, to complete as part of the submission. Let me just read one question for you. Has your company scientifically measured your greenhouse's emission? What operational performance benchmarks do you currently use? What transition milestones you have identified in your plan? And milestones here, it's referred to becoming more green, less emission, less gas flaring, and so on. So this is not something to be taken lightly. Everyone in the energy sector must be aware of this. In a recent meeting with SCOR Paris, the French reinsurer, they made it very clear that ESG and its assessment questionnaire will be part of the review of clients. Recently, you may have read that the Swiss reinsurance company out of Switzerland made a similar announcement saying that unless their energy clients have a certain emission quota and comply with the ESG criteria and so on, they may not renew this business. To me and to other brokers, this is very serious state of affairs. If I move to losses, how am I doing, Mohsen, with time? Am I okay to go for another 10 minutes on the losses?
Yes, we have enough time, but in order to, I want to let you know that almost everybody wish to have a copy of the questionnaire. And I want to flash back to the first question. In the video, we see an explosion occur, a piece of metal with a very high speed suddenly hit the tank, and the main fire initiated. I believe that it was a sudden accidental loss, and I believe it's covered under, for example, property all risk insurance or a simple CMI insurance in that refinery. Is it true?
Okay, can I make it more difficult?
Please.
Would you consider what happened in the video as one incident or two incidents? And are they connected or not connected? And is the concept, the insurance concept of proximate cause, is it triggered? Is it there? Or we don't have proximate cause, which is a fundamental part of any insurance loss?
Actually, if I want to explain more, we see in the movie, it was actually a chain of accidents. But as I think that as the first accident is explosion, and explosion is covered under that policy, I believe the resulting chain of accident is covered.
Okay, Mohsen, you're absolutely right. The loss or the loss adjuster recommended X amount of payment, although it was argued that these two separate incidents. First, the eroded plate could not keep the consumable elements within, that's first loss. And then the shrapnel or piece of metal hitting the tank triggered another loss. Now, there was some debate whether this is one loss or two losses. But in your views or that of your colleagues, why would underwriters consider this as two separate losses, and the insured would prefer to have it as one loss? If not, I can continue to offer comments from our experience here on what we see.
دوستان اگر کسی این سوالم بتونه کمک بکنه، خیلی سوال جالبیه. به نظرم بچه‌های اتکایی میتونن مشارکت بکنن که چرا آندررایترها این رو اصلا دو تا خسارت در نظر میگیرن، یا چرا، یعنی در واقع تو این موضوع بحث میشه که اینا یه خسارت بگیریم یا دو تا خسارت.
I think, Mohsen, if you'd allow me to comment and take it from me, underwriters and reinsurers, and sorry, when I say underwriters, I mean reinsurers.
Yeah.
Often, wherever it is possible, they would like to suggest that this is two incidents, two losses, and therefore two valid claims. In such a scenario, when you have two valid claims, then effectively you will have two sets of deductibles being triggered. One the first time, and again for the second loss. And one for the property damage, and the second for business interruption.
Yeah,
but The insured should argue that this is only one loss, loss.
Yeah.
I think you would agree on this concept.
Exactly.
Underwriters prefer two losses to show it as two incidents, the client as one.
Exactly.
Okay, this is the next few slides, Mohsen. It's just really to make your team, your colleagues smile a little bit. Simply, just to show you that sometimes the human mind can be can be not functioning very well. This is in somewhere in Norway. You can see a car fell in the river. No injuries, nothing. So they called this truck to pull it out. As always, there wasn't any proper study whether this truck is sufficient to pull out this car out of water or not. Again, this truck wasn't able to pull the car. The truck, or what we call the winch lift, fell in the water. Again, the next step, what did they do? They brought a bigger truck and they had it supported by two supporting beams, either part of the truck. And what do you think happens next, Mohsen?
It happened again.
Again and again. Some people, anyway, this is simply just to make you smile and nothing else. Again, a truck, this is in El Salvador or Honduras in South America. They're taking this huge generator through certain parts of the country. This is the bridge. No one checked whether the bridge can take this weight. And don't forget that this loss, this incident is covered under the marine cargo of the insured. Yeah. The bridge could not take the weight, it collapsed, the generator is damaged, and so on. Sometimes the human mind can be very absent.
Yeah.
You can see now it took them a while to pull it out, so there was a marine cargo loss and advanced loss of profits loss following marine cargo. The one on the right, he's in a swimming pool fixing on a metal ladder, fixing the electricity. The one on the left, he's put a wooden scaffolding again to fix the light. Again, simply to make you laugh and smile at what we see. This incident happened in Dubai in 2007, I believe. This is the huge Infinity Tower when they start digging for it. As you can see, the arrow is pointing to a bit of seepage and leakage in the wall, in the retaining wall. Again, for several days, it has been ignored by the construction company. The water increased, you can see, so they try to pump it out instead of trying to fix the repair or investigate the repair. The next slide showing that the retaining wall collapsed. Again, it flooded. Again, it became part of the Dubai Marina. This is the Marina area. And this is a genuine incident. It took place in 2007. And this is how, on the right-hand side, you can see the site where the tower is. It does exist now, but you can see that it's like a swimming pool. These are two slides for the videos I've shown. I will not show them for now. Again, accidents do happen, several incidents in several parts of the world, but I'd like to spend a minute or two to talk about these incidents. You can see on the left-hand side, when a study was carried out on these losses, you can see that non-mechanical integrity failure attributed to more losses. It's the one in the red, and it's showing 57%. Now, the next one on the right-hand side, and again, 56% in blue, and it's showing that the result of this is erosion. Sometimes hidden erosion or corrosion can be very serious, and therefore preventive and predictive maintenance should be in place. Obviously, human error, maintenance, and operational maintenance contributed to more losses. Mohsen, I have a full study on this, going back for several years, studying almost 100 loss and how it's happened. I'm happy to share if required through separate message.
Yeah, please.
Ethylene plant, again, these are other losses. Ethylene plant with VCE. Do we know what VCE means, Mohsen? Do your colleagues are familiar with the expression of VCE?
No, actually.
VCE, which is what we've seen in the video, vapor cloud explosion.
Oh, yes.
You will have the gas leak or other gases leaking, and then they explode because of some sort of ignition. And on the right-hand side, you can see that it is effectively total loss, which had exceeded the estimated maximum loss. Normally, engineers and underwriters will work on a plant like this that the estimated loss will be 40% of the total sum insured. But on this scenario, the plant was damaged 100%. And this incident, it changed the underwriter's view on EMLs and PMLs calculation. Again, this is a different study through different sources. Another major incident, this is again in Los Angeles in 2013, fire explosion. As you can see, the heat exchanger basically was blocked and ended up to self-explode, and then the whole plant in the sky. Many people killed, many people injured. Another example of VCE, you can see a lot of VCE leakage and explosion. This one is in Germany. This is more or less recent by our standard of business. This one is in the UK. The fire went on for days and days. It was very famous in December 2005 to the extent that several airports had been shut because of the smoke. Again, leakage and the VCE and so on. Again, same problems. And if I may take this opportunity to comment on EML calculation. EML again showed that it's way beyond 40% of the loss. Texas City, VCE due to gasoline spillage in one of the columns. Again, this is showing you that total loss of the refinery. Now here, it's not only the impact of material damage, but also the business interruption on refineries of this size and this on the supply of refined products in the market and loss of market share. Just more or less my semi-final slide. When you as an insurance company looking at losses and policy wordings, etc., and indeed as originally insured, it is very important that you need to be aware of the difference between full reinsurance clause or claims cooperation clause or claims control clause. And each one of them have different impact on you as an insurance company and how you are able to recover your claims. Ideally, the claims clause should be full reinsurance, which means that the reinsurance company will follow the local ceding companies in every way and every sense of the, as far as the loss is concerned, and should not stop the original insured from carrying out certain early investigations and so on. So therefore, full reinsurance claims clause is recommended. Again, I would encourage you, if you are working or reviewing this, to look at payments on accounts. Payment on accounts, very important. This helps the insured to have liquidity. And payment on accounts are decided by the loss adjuster, possibly at the early stage of the loss. And here, may I advertise the importance of the role of involving an insurance or reinsurance broker. And you must always ensure that you have claims manual procedure. This document is very essential. It shows the various people involved and their responsibilities during the early stages of incidents or losses. And as you know, here in London, we tend to refer to them as incident losses, and only they become claims once approved by underwriter that they are claims. My last topic on the agenda, it's really preparing for the future. And if I may be free, I'm talking about the Iranian insurance market. Should the situation change and should your market decide that they are in a position to acquire energy reinsurance, then it would be always best to update your internal records and statistics and indeed your portfolio on each and every risk you have on your file. I would also check what is available in terms of local capacity versus international capacity. I would also encourage you to look up to update the risk information that you have on your files. I appreciate that this could be the work of your client or the original insured, but you could work with the original insured to help him to put the risk in better situation or in better condition. And just one or two items here worth mentioning, that it's important that once you decide to approach international markets, you need to make sure that your sums insured, your values are up to date to avoid the impact of average clause. And Mohsen, I'm assuming that your colleagues would know what average clause. If not, I'm happy to explain or to stop here for you to explain.
Yeah. این average clause همون ماده 10 خودمونه، یعنی اعمال قاعده نسبی خسارت که اگر مالی به کمتر از ارزش واقعی خودش بیمه شده باشه، موقع خسارت average رو اعمال میکنیم.
And where possible, once you decide that you need to approach international markets, it's very important that you update the technical side of the risk. Maybe you can use your engineers to visit each and every site that you think you would require capacity for, and maybe look at certain recommendations that was done in the past, maybe comment on them, offer updates, anything you can do to help the international market to see what's going on. Loss adjusters are very important as always, and you need to make sure you have local loss adjusters as well as international loss adjusters. And here, if I may suggest that local loss adjusters, they need to be up to date with the international changes on adjusting losses and the cost of equipment because of the sanctions, because of COVID and the prices of oil. Certain types of equipment can be very expensive. You may, moving forward in the future, and I hope we can all see this coming, working together, but you need to be aware that certain reinsurers will continue to have the the sanction clause imposed. I am working at the moment on ensuring oil fields in Sudan. As you may know, recently Sudan came out of the US sanctions. However, some underwriters continue to impose certain restriction or certain types of sanctions. Often, I have seen it on Sudanese and other business. I have seen the LMA 3000 clause. Be aware of these. The LMA 3000, it has its impact, and you need to be aware.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mohsen. Thank you for you and for the everything. And I'm happy to answer questions now or by way of email. I'll leave it for you to decide.
Okay. Thank you, Ishaq. That sounds great. It's been a pleasure meeting you again. We enjoyed the material. I appreciate your interest and support for our club. Many of the CAFE members asked me to convince you to come again to our program in the future. If you want to add anything, we have another 1 minute to conclude the session and say goodbye. And I will ask my friend if there is any question, please open your microphone and ask question. ایمیل و شماره تلفنشون هم آقای اسحاق خدمتتون گذاشتن که واتساپشون هم همیشه فعاله و در تماس میتونیم باشیم. اگر دوستان سوالی دارن یا سلام علیکی بخوام بکنن در خدمتتون هستیم، اگر نه جلسه رو تمام کنیم. Okay, Ishaq, you can conclude the session at this time, and I think it's time to say goodbye. Thank you for your attention. Thank you all of the participants. Thank you, Ishaq, and hope to see you again.
Thank you very much, Mohsen, to you and to everyone. I wish you all the best and hope to see you soon, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Thank you, Mohsen. All the best. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.